Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way on this episode of Off 90. Meet a woman whose pottery skills come in handy for creating her sculptures. You may have seen her work at the Renaissance Festival. We'll talk to a man who has a unique collection which you might have seen at the Minnesota State Fair. Attend a fashion show where the dresses come from a different century. And we check in on a roll call of artists at a special gallery showing. It's all just ahead, Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Off 90. Have you ever been to the Renaissance Festival and visited a merchant who sells provocative and textured ceramic torsos? The artist responsible is Lynette Power from Rivertown Pottery in Winona. We paid Lynette a visit and learned about the many projects she is involved in.
The response that I love the most is when people come into my booth and they will just stand there with their mouths open, gaze around, and then after a little while they'll come over and tell me, I am just speechless, I am in awe. And that's the highest compliment to me, you know, that's when I know that I'm doing the right thing. I mean, it's a really fulfilling moment when people can tell me that. Yeah, I have always been interested in art. My neighbor would take us into her home and I would play with her younger daughter, and we would draw. And she showed me how to make a face and noses and stuff like that. I was really proud of my drawings after that. And then in kindergarten, really loved finger painting. In college, I took a lot of art classes. However, I was more interested in the social life and whatnot, and I flunked my first sculpture class. I started doing ceramics in my 20s, and that was a lot of functional work. I've always wanted to do figurative work, however, and thought about trying to learn how to do classical sculpture, but really didn't know how to go about that because all the schools are a lot more academic oriented. There's very few of the colleges that will teach that classical style of sculpture. I began some study of anatomy and massage therapy. And as a result of the massage therapy work, it really heightened my interest in learning the classical sculpture. And as a result of that massage therapy training, I really dived into the classical sculpting. I was walking on a beach and I saw this rock outcropping, and as we approached that rock outcropping, there were stones coming out of the sand. It kind of looked like a very primitive figure of just the legs and the tummy and the breasts and the head coming out of the sand. And so I just was going, man, I wish I had some clay here. I want to sculpt that. And so I started seeing these little simple figures everywhere. I mean, I could see them in branches of trees. I could just see these simple little figures everywhere. And so started doing it more and more in clay, and the torsos that have been so popular kind of came out of that. So where one of the first really successful torsos came from was I had been at one of my classical sculpting classes and had a very nice 32-inch male sculpture, nearly complete, but I didn't have time to finish it for a show that I was going to. So I made a mold on the back of this male sculpture and didn't include the head or the legs, just did the anatomy on the back, and made the mold, and then made a few copies in that mold. It went over like crazy, and that became one of my most popular sculptures. So obviously, I pursued that direction. Well, I do feel really hooked on sculpting and clay and bronze. I can get into a zone with it. And the last sculpture that I just completed for the Frozen River Film Festival, there were nights that I would go down to do just one more little thing on it, like at about 10 o'clock, just another half an hour of work to just resolve one more area. And I would come up there at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was just like, what? It's light out? So you can get into this zone where things are just clicking away. And then there's other times that are just, with this otter sculpture, getting this tree built has been so frustrating. It's like I'm doing a few things on the computer, trying to get some things done, and it's like, oh, I gotta get away from this. I'll go do some stuff on the computer, come back when after I've had a little bit of a break. So it can be both ways. And once it starts to flow and move, and like in this otter, I'm just now starting to see the forms, and when you start seeing things connecting and you see, oh, that needs a little bit more there to really make it happen, and then, oh yeah, it's just so satisfying when that really starts to happen. There's a few shows that I do, and then the 2 Renaissance festivals, so that's pretty much my schedule for the year. My ex-husband and I did 25 art shows a year, so that would be every other weekend that we were out doing shows. And that went on for quite a few years, and then when we were doing one of the Chicago art shows, a promoter came through and asked us if we would be interested in doing Renaissance festivals. By the point that promoter actually invited us, I think my daughter says she was 7 years old when we started. My daughter started working with me as of last summer, and it is an absolute joy because she has got her dad's enthusiasm with people. She's got that same fascination for people and who they are, and kind of a charisma. So she's going to be working with me again through this season, and I'm totally delighted about that. Okay, see how it slid right in there? I've had all the way from somebody walking into my shop and looking around at the nudes and the torsos and going, this is smut, and marching out. And sometimes I have people come in with their little kids and they kind of look around, and then all of a sudden they make a beeline for the door. Like, come on, kids, let's get out of here. But mostly, you know, people get it, that this is about the beauty of the human form and of nature, and that they just really, truly, deeply appreciate the resonance of that, so.
You'll see a lot of unusual exhibits at the State Fair. One of those exhibits is a large collection of cloth seed sacks. The proud owner of this collection is Kelsey of Lamberton. Learn about the history of his offbeat collection.
I get a lot of comments at the Minnesota State Fair. In fact, I spend a lot of the time at the State Fair answering questions. There are things like, have you written a book about these? Can we make t-shirts out of these? So there's various interests in it. My name is Kelsey. I'm from Lamberton, Minnesota, and I'm a collector of vintage seed sacks. I collect them because I believe that I sort of always have been kind of close to corn. My dad showed corn at the Minnesota State Fair for 53 years. I was involved in 4-H and always had corn projects and so on, and I just have been interested in corn, and now I'm at the superintendent of the Minnesota State Fair, and I do have a place to show them, and there's very few places that you can actually show these because of the amount of room that they take up to be shown. My parents raised seed corn for 2 different companies, one from Mountain Lake and one from Sacred Heart. And we'd raise the corn for them, and then it would be bagged and it would be sold. I was born in 1940, and so in the 40s and the 50s I remembered these bags, and then I realized there were no bags anymore. Most of these vintage seed sacks were made out of cotton. At the end of the 1950s, they changed to paper and plastic. Then I just started the collecting because I remembered seeing those bags when we planted our corn. The seed sacks, when I started collecting them 20, 25 years ago, you could buy them for $2, $5, $10, quite easily. Now the bags are $50 and up, and I've seen them sell on eBay for over $200. Those with the American Indian design on them are considered the most valuable of the seed sacks. In the 30s and 40s, some of the small seed corn companies in the Corn Belt named their seed corn company for the mascots of various colleges. For example, these are the Gophers from the University of Minnesota, the Cornhuskers from Nebraska, and the Hawkeyes from Iowa, and the Wolverines from Michigan. Well, of course, graduating from the University of Minnesota, I like the Gopher bag, I like the Big Ten bag. I guess it's hard to say that I actually have a favorite bag, but those are pretty nice bags. We have 3 interesting sacks here, and they all have animals on them. All 3 of these animals have big ears, which is what this corn thing is all about. Here we have 2 seed sacks that have actual people on them. The Jake Seed Corn Company in Wisconsin put their baby daughter on this corn and put it on the sack. And in this second one here, we have a picture of the young man who, in 1937, won the hand corn picking contest. His parents owned the corn company and had his picture put on the sack. At the Minnesota State Fair, there's a number of questions asked about these sacks. People have interest in them for different reasons. Number one, the number of people who come there that are graphic designers, and they're interested in and trying to determine how these were graphically designed that long ago. A second one that people are interested in. They're looking for their hometown. Another one that people are really interested in are the older people that are of another generation, and they remember when they had a dress made out of a flour sack, or they remember how they bleached out these sacks so that they could make their dish towels out of them. They remember that these things were never thrown away. Everything was used on the farm. You have to try to keep them out of the light. The sun would take the color out, for example. So they can't be out very much or they're going to lose their color. So I put them away in tubs and then put them in a dark spot. It's a part of Minnesota history, and I'm sort of a historian, and I don't believe that we can allow this to be lost. I think the future of them will be that someday they will go to some museum. And I'm hoping that the history behind them is kept. So that's why I need to write a book.
See the fashions of the well-to-do from the 19th century. We attended a fashion show in Rochester where the various fashions from each decade of the 1800s were displayed. The dresses were created by Joy Melcher, who has an extensive knowledge of fashion history.
Financially, when things are not going on the upward trend, the hemlines come down. When America starts recovery and it's a boom period, hemlines come up. I'm Lisa Baldus, the Executive Director of the History Center of Olmsted County. The Historical Fashion Show was put on as an educational event. The Olmsted History Center played a major part in it. They had actually went out and sought out donations and sponsorship so they could put the educational program on for the community to come and watch. It was a little bit longer than what maybe some people expected because it was an educational program. It wasn't just a fashion show. We wanted to highlight a period of time in American history that really displayed a huge variance in actual clothing for women. It went from the hoop skirts to the more slimming style with the bustles, and all that really was over about a 20-year period of time. And that's a huge difference. When you look at history as a whole, and you go back, 1,000 years, you had straight, long dresses for a long period of time. Well, now you're looking at 20 years, and you had huge changes take place. Because morally, socially, financially, you had major swings that was taking place in the community. Joy Melcher designs period-style clothing. Many of her pieces have been in major museums across the United States. Our board of directors reached out to her because they had heard about her great work, and they wanted her to team up and put this educational programming on here because they felt that it would probably have a huge draw and the people of Rochester would appreciate it. It was sold out completely, 230, no spaces left.
I am a student of history. I am not an academic. I am truly a hobbyist, but I've been very fortunate that my hobby has expanded into a livelihood that I truly love and enjoy. What we did was we started a timeline at the 1800s, and we premiered a fashion up until the 1920s, which took us from the Jane Austen Regency period, which is very popular, and took it every 10 years up to the Downton Abbey time period, which is another really popular time period right now. It's kind of a show everyone loves to watch, and I'm really happy about that because it does bring an interest of history into our households, and sometimes we miss that.
It's important because it's part of living history. You actually get to see something. You could feel the clothing as well, but you get to experience it. It's right there in front of your face. And with living history, there's so much more to it. What we try to do is to present an object and have it be more of a personal experience. It was a wonderful event to attend. And it wasn't just because it was fun and there's desserts and you got to have your friends with you and see some really beautiful gowns. You actually got to learn something. And you walked away with more knowledge than you had prior to sitting down at that table before the fashion show started.
There was an explosion in Rochester, an artistic explosion. Several artists came together to show their work for one night at the Salon Gallery in Rochester. Come with us to experience the music, refreshments, and art of a show called The Artistic Explosion.
In this town, art didn't have an outlet for a long time, and it was just piling up in all these people's closets, and now that we have an outlet, it's just amazing because once you have the outlet for it, it makes you want to create more. The salon here is a place where artists can come and work together, or meet each other, and it's a free space that people can use for shows or any kind of practice or just any kind of meetings at all. So it's been a really good place to bring artists in Rochester together. The art scene in Rochester has really been starting to change over the last couple years. Like 2 years ago, I couldn't find anything for art, and there was absolutely nothing. But with the start of C4 is Concerned Citizens for a Creative Community. There's really been something happening downtown, and the artists have been able to actually find each other, and through finding each other has been able to make things start to happen. The Artistic Explosion show was a gathering of about 40 of the artists that had met over the last year, and we filled the place up with as much art as we could, and I got a few different bands to play throughout the night. Yeah, when you have 40 different artists, I had no idea what was going to end up being shown. I just gave each one of them a certain amount of space and let them all show up the day beforehand and put their stuff up. So each person had their own control of their own little spot, and I just had to have faith in each artist that they would show up and do something that was cool. And everybody did. Over the year, I'd seen everybody growing and getting better, and at this show, it seemed like everybody stepped up their game a little bit. We had a chance to see just how people had grown and how they push themselves, and it's exciting to see people looking at each other's artwork and challenging themselves. I heard a lot of really positive reactions. A lot of people were excited about the quality of the work, and it was a really fun night. So I think a lot of people enjoyed it, and the music was good, and it was a lot of happy people. So I hope we can keep that going with our other shows that we have.
That's all for this episode. Please help Off 90 meet its financial obligations by becoming a member of KSMQ Public Television. Give us a call at 1-800-658-2539 or sign up online at ksmq.org. Thanks for watching. Join us next time, Off 90.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.